One framework that's had the biggest impact on my career is the jobs to be done theory. It's the idea that people hire products to accomplish a job. For example, you might be hiring marketing products to learn marketing frameworks to help your campaigns stand out. Now, understanding what your customers are hiring a product to do can help you educate people better on how your product can help them become better than their competitors. Today, Alli Blum, growth consultant in Hypothesis Department, shares strategies to help you get org-wide buy-in for the jobs to be done theory at your company. In this episode of Marketing Pops, you learn, first of all, common objections to adopting the jobs to be done theory. Second, tips to get org-wide buy-in for the jobs to be done. Third, how marketers can start using the jobs to be done theory. And finally, fourth, Alli's career power. Are you ready? Let's go.
Marketing power-ups. Ready? Go! Here's your host, Ramli John.
Thank you so much for jumping on and talking about something that's near and dear to my heart, the jobs to be done theory. It's like a framework that's made the biggest impact in my career. But for people who for people who don't know what it is the idea that products and services, people hire products and services to accomplish a job to be done. And I know why it's important, but for people who are tuning in who might be skeptical or might not have heard about it, why should marketers care about it at all? Do you have anything that you can share as to why it's something that could make a big difference in terms of marketers who are tuning in terms of their work and their job?
Yeah. So if you are a marketer, chances are you are working with some kind of static representation of your customer. You have a user type, a user group, a user persona, an ICP. There's something that you're already using as a way to say, this is who my customer is. We sell supply chain software to supply chain managers. We sell design software to designers and small business creators. And that's really, really helpful in orienting yourself to the world that you're in and the types of folks you might work with and sell to and have relationships with as a business. But it's really like looking at a photograph. It's a static moment in time. Whereas I like to say the jobs to be done is much more like watching the home videos or watching the movie, the documentary, getting a much more dynamic understanding of what happens over time. So user group or a user type could tell you the who in a single moment with very limited characteristics. And jobs to be done is going to give you the when, the why, the how, the what if, the I thought I could, or I thought I couldn't, but then I could, the objections. It's so much more, and it's such a more holistic and comprehensive way of looking at your customers and the journey that they're going through to make the progress in their own lives and in their relationship with you as a business. So any initiative that you are going to embark on can benefit from knowing much more about what's going on in your customers' worlds when they're making that decision. So when you conduct a jobs to be done project, you're going to end up with a set of job stories. So that's what we call the artifacts at the end. And they're going to have these statements that say, when I am in a set of circumstances, give me a way to make some kind of progress so I can achieve some kind of outcome. Baked within that, there's going to be so much more rich data that you're going to be able to write better copy on your landing pages, on your emails, on your sales page, on your marketing site, come up with so many more ideas that that you could be putting on your site, messages that you could tailor to your audience. And you're also, and this is really, really important for scale-ups in particular, or startups, anyone with way too many things on their list, a jobs to be done project is going to give you so much insight onto what you can actually just cross right off your list. Things you just do not need to bother with because your customers aren't going to care nearly as much as you will.
Ali, thank you so much for sharing that about job stories and why jobs to be done is so important and how impactful it is. I've seen it myself, but often I hear some challenges. You probably heard this yourself, some objections around why marketing teams don't adopt this. I'm curious, what are some common objections you've heard? Maybe it's oh, there's a product thing. This doesn't apply to us. But with your work, what are those objections you've heard, and how would you respond to them?
The most common objections that I hear are regarding jobs to be done on whether it's marketing, product, executive, wherever that resistance is coming from. The most common objection that I observe is inertia and momentum. So the most common ways that presents is we already hearing something like this, we already have that handled. Like we already have customer research. We have a way of doing things here. We don't need that. Or we have a long list of projects already. We don't need to pause research because jobs to be done research, it has a little bit of a, if you're not familiar with it, it sounds a little bit like let's slow down and think about things, but we're a startup and we're scale up and we move quickly and we break things. So that won't work for us. And a lot of times, that kind of marketing and product crossover, a lot of times there may be sort of different camps within an organization where one team might have a position on this is how our research is, this is what we know about our customers, and the other department may have a slightly different way. So there may be some. If you're finding that you're having trouble getting buy-in beyond your department for spreading jobs to be done either out of marketing, if that's the department you're in, or out of product, then a lot of times that can come down to like we've got a social political dilemma that we've got to resolve here because we're working off of different understanding of who our customer is and a different philosophical basis for how we ought to be making decisions as a company about how we serve those customers.
I love how you put it there, inertia and momentum. It's really about we already know. And I think that's a challenge. I guess the follow-up question to that, and you talked about it a little bit around the political, how can a marketer who's an individual contributor get buy-in to do it, or start? Would you just suggest applying it secretly like a ninja and then show the results after and be like, oh, look at the results of this? Or I'm curious what your advice would be for a marketer who's an individual contributor to get buy-in around this.
Yeah. If you are working on getting buy-in for jobs to be done at your organization, one of the best there's two big paradigm shifts that I would invite you to make. And the first is to really start thinking about that work that you're doing of getting that buy-in through the lens of change management. So done right, and I think you know this, I heard you call jobs to be done a theory. So jobs to be done is a theory of innovation, and done right, it's something that it might start in marketing, product, customer success. It might start somewhere, but done right, it's going to affect every aspect of the company. We're going to figure out what our customers' job stories are, the progress that they want to make. We're going to figure out what experiences of use and purchase we ought to build so that we can help them make that progress. And that's on that IC level. That's where we're really going to be making that kind of progress, building those things. But then after we identify those types of experiences and build them, then we're really going to want to integrate our organization, organize ourselves around serving those customers in that progress. So ideally, it won't just be a marketing campaign or marketing strategy. It's going to be something that we do share with the product. And we're going to march in lockstep, and we're going to all have a really good basis for who it is that we want to be, who it is that we're serving, what matters to them. When we're going to have arguments, it's going to be about the best way to solve the same problem rather than a dispute about which problem it is that we're trying to solve. And things are going to work so much better when we get to do that. So that's your starting point. Is I'm an IC and I've got enough juice within my company that I know I'm going to be able to influence my peers around the org. Maybe I still need buy-in from my boss. Maybe I need it from a VP or above. But I still want to be thinking about it through the lens of this is going to be really successful when a lot of people are involved. And what that does is starts to make it really easy for that second paradigm shift to take place, which is we come into this question of, how do I get buy-in on research or jobs to be done? How do I get more people to care about what my customers think? How do I get that VOC to be front and center? And the way to do this is to make that initiative less about what your customers care about and the progress that they want to make, and more about what your boss, your coworkers, your stakeholders, whoever's going to be the ones signing off on those initiatives and mobilizing that with you, more about what they want to think. So your change management initiative is going to be about figuring out what kinds of problems your colleagues have. I like to keep a library anytime, researching my colleague who doesn't yet understand jobs to be done. Let me take a list of everything that's bothering them. Let me get to know them. Let me do some research on them informally. If it's formal, it might feel a little bit stiff, but let me get to know them and what's important to them. And then let me go find some VOC. So starting small, you're revealing yet, but you're starting to reveal little bits of VOC, 30-second snippets. I love using Descript audiograms to say, hey, this is remember that problem you were talking about in all hands? Like I found a customer who is dealing with the same thing, and this is how they're solving it. Or remember when we were trying to get buy-in on, or remember when we were trying to get more adoption for this feature? I have all of these customers. They didn't even know that we had it. They're asking if we could build it for them. So this is actually a problem I found, and I think I can solve, and I'm going to go solve it. So showing that you're starting to make that, having that slow startup, showing some of that research, little bits at a time, connecting it to what's already really important to the people that you need that buy-in from is going to set that foundation up for you to eventually make that ask and say, okay, look, we've got a lot of progress. We solved a lot of problems with the VOC that we have. And here's what that looks like. And here's the results we get. There's still these other questions we don't have the answers to. And I think if we're really going to take that seriously, this is what's going to be involved. And here's where it might get a little stealth. Maybe you're going to need to hire somebody, or maybe if you really want to get the buy-in, I often recommend to folks just do it yourself. Figure out a way to learn how to run your own jobs interviews and go out and do that research and while building that case for buy-in so that you can be the one to go ahead and get it done. Fastest way to get buy-in on something is to do it yourself.
I like that. And it seems like you're applying the framework, the jobs to be done. Like, what is the job that my boss is trying to do? What is the problem that they have? And use that your approach to getting voice of customer and things like that to the situation, which it's a little bit of a meta thing where like use the job to be done to pitch jobs to be done. That's so cool. That's so cool. That makes sense.
When I was working,
go ahead. No, feel free to share your story. I think that's cool.
When I was working with Enjoy HQ, I worked with, I want to say I helped 50 or so companies get their qualitative research repositories stood up. So this is a new, but starting to be relatively established category where you can store all of your transcripts, your interviews, you can have integrations with your customer support tickets. So you can keep all of your data in one place, and it makes it really easy to share and access. So you're making it as mobile as any of the quantitative data that you're already keeping track of at your company. And when I would meet with a lot of the folks who were starting to use Enjoy HQ, to a T, they all struggled with this. Oh, I don't know how people we're really struggling to get the buy-in on the research, whether it's jobs or whether it's any other kind of VOC program. Really getting folks to take that kind of qualitative data seriously is a struggle at 100% of the companies that I had a chance to meet with. And it remains so fascinating to me because we are uniquely, if we are doing research, we are uniquely predisposed to having the skills to understand exactly what we need to do to connect, to figure out what kind of solution to build. It's what we're doing when we do jobs to be done, is figuring out what kind of experience of use or purchase we want to be able to build so that we help a customer make progress. We have those skills. It does start to feel, okay, so this is where I'll say it. Part of me is like, how come we're not just doing it? Another part of me is like, well, it is a little bit different when it's your colleague, when you have these relationships, you're seeing them every day, when, this isn't the only facet of your relationship, but maybe they're your boss, so they also control how much of a raise you're going to get or whether you're going to be on the chopping block during the next round of layoffs. So there's a lot more nervousness, and it's harder to see. Our lens can narrow there a little bit, but a lot of the same tools and principles can apply. Figure out what progress your boss or your stakeholders want to make, and find a way to show that you can help them make it.
I like that. I think what I heard was something you mentioned earlier as well. Is like you mentioned the word momentum, and it's like if you can get a few, and then almost like a domino effect. Yeah, it's like getting one person to get bought in, and eventually, hopefully, you get the whole team bought into that thing. So you're like slowly building it up. I'm guessing it's like a totally different experience from a marketer who's an individual contributor to, let's say, a director, VP, or C level. Do you have any advice for those people who are like higher up, who are like executive leaders, and like, yeah, I get it. Like I've seen it work in other companies. Would it be the same pattern where like you get a few people bought in? I'm guessing there's a little bit more influence there, so maybe they can skip a step. So like, what's your advice to those executives who might have want to like get this adopted by their team or other teams in the company?
It's so interesting because there's so many things that are similar and so many things that are a little bit different. So the biggest difference is to look at your power dynamics with the people that you need to be getting that buy-in from, and how that is going to influence a lot of what you're doing. If you're a junior mid-level IC, if you're junior level, if you're a principal or very senior IC, a lot of what I said earlier may or may not be the technique you want to use. It may come down more to experience level and power and influence that you already have related to your position. But if you are relatively in that first group that I was just describing, most of the people that you need the buy-in from are going to be higher up on the food chain than you are. And they're going to have less time. They're going to have more priorities that maybe you don't ever know about. You're probably going to have a little bit of a different relationship. When you're already in an executive position or very, very high IC, you're going to be getting a lot more lateral buy-in from people across the board, and a lot more education and instruction and training for the people who are either reporting to you or working alongside you cross-functionally or in either different departments or at your level as the IC. Here's what I mean by that. Unless you are the CEO, so you're still going to have a little bit of that element. You're still going to want to take that approach to get that CEO bought in. When the CEO is bought in on jobs to be done, that's when it's the most effective because it will answer so many of the questions across the organization, and it will make so many things make so much more sense and happen more effectively. So you're still going to make sure you have that person at the top really bought in. I actually spoke with one company that they wanted their entire board bought in on this approach. Wow. So that having that entire most senior top-down approach can be really, really powerful. But that next level, so you're going to have a little bit of a different technique here with that next level. The next level, it's going to depend a lot on the relationships that you have with your fellow executives on the team. So if you're a marketer and you're trying to bring in jobs to be done to solve one of the problems you have related to your growth targets or how many leads you're bringing in or the pipeline that you're building or whatever your targets are, your counterpart in product or your counterpart in growth, depending on how your team is structured, is going to have similar adjacent priorities, but they're going to be solving them in a different way. And marketing and product getting aligned is the absolute hardest part at that senior level because these tend to be folks who are both really, really seasoned. They have gotten to their positions. If you are either of these folks, you have had a lot of experience. You've seen a lot of things work. You've seen a lot of things not work. You've probably seen people try to get jobs to be done up and running and not succeed. Maybe you have even been in that position yourself. So it's really, really challenging because by that point, many, many folks have a really crisp perspective on what they believe works. So you want to make sure if you can, try to get that alignment before you even start at the company. But if you can't, or if you've been promoted into the role or someone gets hired into it, of course you can't always do that. That's where you're going to want to really build that relationship and really be sharing a lot of information and making sure that they're bought in. Any initiative that you push forward, you're probably going to want to make sure you have members from both teams included. Product is very unlikely to want to implement marketing's research. Marketing, I have seen marketers get swayed into products research, but I have seen they're still not going to want to implement products research. We want this to be done together. Yeah. Now, the big thing that happens here, okay, so you're going to want to start with that top level. So getting that top-down approach is going to be really, really important because if you don't have that, anything your team, your direct reports or colleagues is going to do is going to take a lot. You're not going to have that buy-in. There's going to be a lot of infighting that you're not going to hear about it. You're just going to hear some grumpies and it's going to be tough on morale. So you want to get that really, that top level really locked in, and that's going to make it so much easier for your team and for everyone. Okay. Once you have that and you say, okay, we're going to execute this jobs to be done study either with our internal team, with an external partner. This is why you're going to want to do something similar where you're sharing why you're doing it. You're repeating that message often. I like to say leadership is repetition. You're going to want to say that over and over, why this matters now, how you weigh the trade-offs in the right, in different audiences, depending on how your leadership team meets. And then after you have those stories, then you're going to want to mobilize them in different ways, depending on the audience. So that executive level, maybe you have the kind of company where everyone on your team is just as thoughtful as you are and just as dedicated to getting that deep level of understanding of the customers because they believe that it will transform everything about how they grow and will set them up for long-term success.
That is so
Probably
good.
not, though. So, in that case, I'm still going to recommend elements of that strategy where you're going to want to present different insights and It's going to depend on your team, but you may want to say, like, during our dedicated leadership time for the next month, I'm going to share highlights of what we learned about each one of our 4 job stories, for example. You're going to share little clips of the VOC, 30-second. I love using Descript. I think Canva has a feature of this now where you can upload a 30-second clip of a customer talking, and it will give subtitles. I've seen people eat these up. Like they're so phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't care how much, I would say, let me start that sentence over. Even if you have somebody who believes completely in jobs to be done, who's totally on board with everything you're saying, it is very unlikely that they are going to voluntarily take 10 hours out of their time to listen to all 10 interviews unless there is some kind of push. I count myself in this. I was recently, oh my gosh, this is kind of embarrassing, but I was working on a project recently. One of my colleagues had done a round of jobs interviews. I knew exactly where they were. They'd been there a while. I knew all about them. And I was working on a different user group. So I knew they were there. I knew I was going to have to read them. I was going to have to listen to them. Oh, I'll get to it. And then I found a problem that I needed to solve. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm listening to the interviews now. And I listened to them straight through in one sitting. Well, 2 sittings. It was 10 hours. But even for somebody who's a real believer, sitting down to listen to 10 hours is not likely. That's not a fun request. Taking a snippet of that and putting into a 30-second clip and sharing that out, that's fun. Like getting a Descript with a 30-second customer like clip. Oh, this is fun. It's new. It's novelty. I haven't seen it before. Maybe it helps me do my job, and it only took 30 seconds. And there's also something really like deeply connecting and empathy building about hearing that voice and that connection with that customer. So you're going to, oh wow, that was a long tangent. You're going to want to do a lot of that up at the executive level. Okay. Here's the really important part. Your ICs can also mutiny. Your ICs on your direct reports can also resist this. And they will have not only the same forces of inertia and momentum. I already know what I'm doing. They will have the force of inexperience and Dunning-Kruger. They will have the force of, my boss does not know what they are talking about. They will have the force of, now my boss wants me to do this. I thought they wanted me to do that, especially if there's any element of VUCA, which is, we were chatting about this earlier. If there's any element of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which are it's a very common scenario for scale-ups to be in this environment. That's a term that comes from the US military. Nobody really knows what's going on. Things are changing. It's hard to navigate if you're not used to it. So if you have that kind of environment and you introduce jobs and you're not really that careful about teaching folks about it, it's going to be really hard. But here's the cool thing.
Yeah.
There is a really great way for you to get your teammates, your direct reports who are your customers in this situation really bought in on what you're doing. And the way that I do that so in my consulting work with customers or with clients, we'll do a jobs to be done study. And then after that study, after everyone's, at the executive level agrees, yes, we are pursuing this strategy, we check that, go through that checkpoint. Then we take that research and we turn it into a custom training based on those job stories for that customer, for that company. And it's a 3-day workshop where everybody, all of the ICs will listen to that audio. We'll go through each of the interviews. We'll go over the 4 forces of jobs to be done. We'll build the Pixar story. We'll have some conversations about the social, functional, emotional forces at play. And then at the end, we'll have each of the folks participating who've never heard our customers before. Maybe they're hearing about jobs to be done for the first time. They're going to cluster and they're going to find the same jobs that we would have found as very experienced researchers, because it's going to jump right off the page. We're doing the same exercise. And then at the end, we're working with each individual department to say, okay, this is how we apply it to our copy programs. This is how we apply it to our landing pages or our funnels. This is how we apply it to our content strategy. And we're going to have those conversations where we're like, the voice of customer data that's in those 10 transcripts is an essential building block for ICs to figure out what they're going to do to help design those experiences of purchase and use for those customers. And by giving them that immersive experience and helping them find those connections and see those patterns, they're going to walk out of that with a much, much deeper understanding and belief and trust in that framework, lower likelihood of mutiny, because they found the same thing that you found. Everybody goes through it and everyone comes to the same conclusion. So everybody's bought in at the end. And then you're able to move forward with that same, with that knowledge that you've all gone through that process. I also recommend this for executives to go through a 3-day workshop listening to the jobs. It is a much harder sell. It is a much harder sell to get that. Not impossible, but much harder.
I love that. You're like really went deep there. Like I really love how you're introduce the 30-second clips of voice of the customer, so that you mentioned the word empathy there. You're really building that empathy and getting that next step was like, how do you apply this to your copy? How do you apply this to you can apply this to so many things. That's why I love it in your sales pitches, in how you do customer success, to upgrade. Like it just overall such a great framework. Thank you for sharing how to get buy-in here. I want to shift gear.
It's so fun. I could talk about it all day. It's so fun. Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem at all. Thank you for sharing that. I want to shift gears and talk about career power-ups. You've been in SaaS now for over a decade. You worked at different product and marketing and growth roles at Atlassian, Mural, and different other SaaS companies. I'm curious, what is a power-up that's helped accelerate your career? And it could be anything soft, like soft skill, like community and making friends with other marketers and product leaders, or something more of a hard skill, around user research or something else.
Okay. I want to share two, and we're probably running long. You can pick whichever one you want to share.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's two, and the first one that I'll share is, we're chatting about this earlier. The first one is learning how to play my infinite game. So I learned about this concept. There's a finite game, which you play to win. You play a game of chess, you play soccer, you play a game. There's a clear winner, a clear loser, a clear timeline. You play it to win it. An infinite game is different. An infinite game is something that you play to play. There's a great quote. I think it's Walt Disney. Is it Walt Disney? I'm probably going to get this wrong. He says, "We don't make movies to make money. We make money to make more movies." So I love the way that he puts that, because we're doing this because we want to keep doing this. And one of the biggest power-ups for me has been discovering what my infinite game is. And this took a long time. So 10 years in SaaS, 15 years working. I started in marketing, did a lot of PR, did research, did UX, and the whole time I'm like, is there something wrong with me? Like, I seem to get bored easily. I'm trying a new skill. I'm working in a new department like every 18 months. This doesn't seem like that common of a thing. And I started to come to a realization once I made my way through to product and now engineering, and hopefully next up finance, that this is part of my infinite game. I love finding these problems where I can use some of the things I already know how to do and find a new skill that I don't know how to do, and find a problem that is going to generate really great outcomes. If we know how to solve it, I'm going to get to learn something really new and challenging that I'll be able to use on the next problem, next time I see something else I don't know how to do. And then at the end, we're going to get the outcomes. We're going to have the really great results. We're all going to be really excited. I'm going to have made some new colleagues, new friends, and great results. So learning that and coming to accept that is what brings me the most joy, and that's kind of what's been driving me all along, has made it a lot easier for me to be able to reframe the conversation, which once was, oh, yeah, I do a lot of different things, I changed my mind. But now it's one of, I understand how SaaS businesses work, because I want to work, because I've made a point of going across the teams and across the departments and across the functions and skills to say, what does a business look like when you're sitting in a marketer's chair? What does it look like when you're sitting in a researcher's chair? What does it look like when you're sitting in a VP's chair? What does it look like when you're sitting in a principal's chair? What does it look like when you're looking at a spreadsheet of finance data? What does it look like when you're staring at the user research? And you get a different perspective in each of those chairs that helps inform a lot of those, makes me better at solving a lot of those problems, because I can pull from all of the different disciplines as we go. All the frameworks all the time. It's like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's kind
so
of like
good.
my
I love that movie.
Yeah. So that's the first one, finding my infinite game. And the second one is something that I call leading by coalition. So this is something I learned about from a great book that I recommend. It's on change management. It's a Harvard Business Review collection of essays. And kind of like you were talking about this a little bit earlier, where you're going to want to, when you want to make something happen, when you want your company to adopt jobs to be done, that's change management. And I think step one of change management, there's a great, like, this is a rubric. There are ways to do this. It's a well-practiced discipline, which was very exciting for me to learn, new framework for all the time. And there are ways to, first you need to find that reason for why you need to make a shift, make a change. And it's going to be different for everyone. And then you're going to start to build that coalition. That might actually be step 3. I think I may have missed a step. And I love this concept. And I started realizing that this is another one of my infinite games. I love to find the thing that I know is most important based on the chair I'm sitting in, the data that I have access to, the opportunities that are on the table. I might say, okay, this is what we need to do. Very often it's getting jobs to be done off the table. Sometimes it's, a product initiative. Sometimes it's a marketing initiative. There's some initiative that's going to operate cross-functionally with lots of people involved. And it's probably going to be a little bit uncomfortable to get going. So I love finding that thing and saying, okay, we're not leading by consensus here. We're not coming into a room trying to get everybody to agree on something. I know what I want to happen. And what I want to do is go find other people who are seeing a problem, but the way that I'm seeing it. So people who are also like, yeah, I have noticed that too. And I think I can solve it, or I've wanted to solve that problem. And, this is what I've tried so far. I haven't been able to. We all kind of agree. And maybe we all have different skill sets. Maybe I have someone with greater technical, maybe greater engineering skills. Maybe somebody has a greater program management. And then we're going to come together and we're going to say, this is what we want to do. And I love being able to show up with a plan that is just concrete enough, or a prototype that is just enough of an example of what it is that I think a solution might look like, to say, okay, I think this is the direction that I want to head in, but I want to get your take. Show me what needs to be better. Tell me what I'm missing about this for this to be really successful. What makes this fail that may not be on my radar screen right now? And then over time, getting those positions, building it up so it's not just something that Alli made, it's something that Alli and Ramli made. It's something that Alli and Ramli and Asia made. And it's something that a lot more people are invested in. And we're going to build it into something that's much bigger and much more significant and has more staying power. So learning to do that, as opposed to what I did early on in my career, which was sit in my chair and grumble about how nobody wanted to listen to the customers. This has been something that has not only helped me advance my initiatives, but it's also brought me so much more joy at work to get to work with my colleagues in that way, and get to share feedback in a way that helps me continue to apprentice under my colleagues and learn from them and still get really great results.
If you enjoyed this episode, you'd love the Marketing Power-Ups newsletter. I share the actionable takeaways and break down the frameworks of world-class marketers. You can go to marketingpowerups.com to subscribe, and you'll instantly unlock the 3 best frameworks that top marketers use, hit their KPIs consistently, and wow their colleagues. I want to say thank you to you for listening, and please like and follow Marketing Power-Ups on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. If you're feeling extra generous, kindly leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave a comment on YouTube. It goes a long way in others finding out about Marketing Power-Ups. Thanks to Mary Sullivan for creating the artwork and design, and thank you to Faisal Kaigo for editing the intro video. And of course, thank you for listening. That's all for now. Have a powered up day.
Marketing Power-Ups. Until the next episode.